Sota Nerd.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Soda Nerd Show, where we talk about comic books, pop culture, collectibles, right?
Everything under the sun. That's awesome.
Yeah, everything under those categories. Ben and I here today talking about fresh out of the movie theater. Literally got in the car after watching the movie, drove right here, and now we're talking about Morbius, the living vampire.
Still picking popcorn out of my teeth.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so we went into this movie. I went into this movie with not high expectations, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I should, before we dive in, I should just preface everybody. We are talking about the Morbius movie today. We're not doing really, I mean, we can touch on comics if we want to, but it's really recapping the movie, our thoughts on the movie. Where do we see things going forward? Because there's going to be more.
There's got to be tie-ins for everything.
There's definitely going to be tie-ins. But yeah, this is very much so kind of just a movie recap. Anyway, with that being said, I had low expectations, right? I messaged you guys, and Rotten Tomatoes, when it first came out, was giving the movie like a 16%, at least from the critics. So automatically I'm like, oh, okay, well, here we go. Another Sony production that's not going to be great.
That's how my feeling was. I knew this was produced by Sony, so I was like, all right, well, let's just go and see what they messed up this time. But it's fine.
So that was your feelings too.
Yeah.
But I already told you, I'm like, I don't know what to think after watching that movie. I don't think it was 16% on the trash meter.
Okay, if you could scale it on a 1 to 10.
What's my scale though?
Okay, well, I mean,
you know what I mean?
Because you're a Spider-Man fan, No Way Home is the 10 aspect.
Oh my gosh, this movie was a 4.5.
Okay.
You know
Gotcha.
what I mean?
Okay.
If that's...
And Captain Marvel is the 1, so that's where I'm just kind of going, that's your
Captain Marvel's the 1. Okay, so if your scale is... Because it wasn't an MCU movie, right? But if you wanted to compare it to MCU movies, it's a 4.5.
Okay, yeah. I can't disagree with that.
Possibly worse. I don't know. I just, from 0 to 100%, I don't know that it was 16. Maybe like 26. I don't know. It was definitely a fail grade for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't a terrible movie, but it was definitely not one of those movies where it's just like, oh, I've got to go see this again.
Yeah. Definitely. It's not really. The only reason I would rewatch that movie is to either try and find nuggets up for tie-ins, right? Or that's the only reason. I'm not watching that again for entertainment value.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was just, there was too much, and we can start to pick it apart too, right? I felt Sony did this movie, but I felt my initial reaction was, they tried really, really hard to make it feel like an MCU movie.
See, as I watched it, I was going, are we watching a DC movie?
Okay.
Because of how dark it was. I understand the whole premise
it was
that,
dark, yes.
But it was just like, it wasn't an MCU level movie at all.
No, it wasn't at all.
I thought it was at least decent for a DC movie. I mean,
okay, so it was dark, right?
Right.
But that was my thought was, after watching the trailers for Morbius, you can't help but think, oh, this is going to be a kind of a darker, more sinister movie.
And that was the whole point of bringing those characters in, because they were bringing in other, dark characters like Blade and stuff like that.
And Morbius is a dark, sinister character, and I'm totally fine with that. But that's sweet. I'm fine with going and watching a dark movie. Where I said that I felt like they tried too hard to make it feel like an MCU movie is stick with the darkness that you showed all of us in the trailers, right? Mm-hmm. And leave out the funny banter jokes that they tried way too hard to throw into this movie.
Right.
Where it was like, I was expecting something completely different along the darker side.
Right.
Whereas they tried to make those MCU jokes and they tried to pull humor out of characters where it was like, why are why are we even trying to make jokes right now? Like, this is
right.
Like, the idea behind what is going on here in this movie is pretty freaking dark. Like, and there's gonna be spoilers throughout us talking about this. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to hear spoilers, click off now, whether you're on podcast or YouTube. That was your warning, because we are going to talk about spoilers. But when he first becomes Morbius and they're on that ship, and I mean, that's pretty sweet. Like, that was, that initial was cool. He's hanging from the ceiling. You're like, ooh, this is pretty creepy. You know what I mean? And he just goes through and slays all these people. Well, up until that point, they didn't really have any of that humor in the movie. It was very serious. Like, he's got this illness he's had his entire life. He's trying to save him and his best friend from it, and everybody else as a doctor and a scientist, right? So there's this very serious feel to it up until he actually becomes Morbius, the vampire.
Yep.
And then they start trying to throw funny little jokes, and it's almost like the personalities of the characters changed from that point on. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Hey, to a point, I can understand that. I mean, because at that point, he hasn't really had the lifted death. You know, he's always been weighted down by, I'm dying all the time. I'm in pain and everything like that. This is the point that he actually feels alive. And, you know, vibrant with energy. So I could see where they want to kind of show that a little bit, but it still didn't fit. It didn't work well.
No,
you know?
it didn't fit, because it was like they tried to randomly throw it in there.
Right.
Or even with definitely that one of the detectives was meant to be a comic relief detective. You could tell, nuts. And he drove me absolutely nuts. Like, the whole feeling of the first quarter of this movie was very heavy, dark, somber. And then it was like the mood changed completely when he becomes this ferocious, blood-sucking vampire. Yeah. Now it's like you're trying to throw comedy into it with these characters, and I don't know, and I don't know why I'm getting so hung up on that.
Hang on, before you leave the cops, every time I saw Tyrese, I was kind of going, when's Van Diesel going to bust in here and be like, it's family, it's all about family. I can't see him in a movie and not think of Fast and the Furious. So I don't know if that was the right choice for the police officer, but I don't know. That's my personal view on that little snippet there.
So that was one of my major hard-hitting dislikes about this movie, was the forced feel of comic relief when there didn't need to be. You know what I mean? Keep it dark, whatever. We can watch a dark movie.
Yeah,
that's totally fine. The other thing would be, it's an origin story, right? He just became this creature that he didn't know about, that he accidentally created trying to save himself, right? And there's him taking notes and taking voice notes, and kind of this idea behind, I don't know how to control this, what I've become.
Right.
Well, skip to where his buddy, who ends up being the villain in the movie, right?
Spoiler.
Yep. His lifelong friend also takes the serum that Morbius took, and just knows how to control it miraculously.
And is whooping his ass, left and right. I don't understand that.
Even Morbius, like, it was like there was the initial, I need to figure out what I've become. I need to figure out how to control this. There was that initial thought process, and then it was totally abandoned from that point on. It was like both of them just knew how to control this completely, and that I had a problem with. I had a big problem with that. That was like, and it's probably because we're so used to the slow burn of MCU movies,
the slow buildup of each character to really know their faults, to know where they came from, to go, now they're hero. You know? So,
exactly. The slow buildup. We're very, very used to that, where this was not that at all. And not even that it wasn't a slow buildup. It was just a buildup that didn't make sense. You didn't explain how there was no origin of coming to, now I can control it. This is how I figured out how to control it. It was just like one scene, I'm writing down notes about how I can't control this beast I've become. 2 scenes later, I can control it perfectly with no explanation whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
That was another big bother of mine.
No, I agree. And that's just it. I feel like the MCU can really, they do like their ability to take their time and build up their characters. Now, I think because this was made from Sony, they want to rush it and get it in there. But I also have to wonder, because it will be eventually tied into the MCU, were they kind of forced to rush? Because of what's coming up with the Phase 4, were they forced to push that ahead of time where, they could have taken a little bit longer of a time to build up this character. But, if we're bringing in bigger characters, because let's face it, Morbius was not that big of a character.
No,
he was, he in the comics anyways, he did, kind of a 5-series comic or whatnot. And then he was in the background, comic series, comic guy for, in a human form, he was for a while that was helping out like Fantastic Four or whatever.
Yeah.
In the background. And then he turned back into Morbius later on down the road, but he was still kind of this background character. He didn't really come into like a full playing character.
Yeah.
So I think that they're bringing in the darker and, the aspect of vampirism so that they can bring in, Blade, because Blade is a large character.
Yes.
Now we all fell in love with the original Wesley Snipes Blade, but let's see what's going to happen with this new Blade. I'm curious how they're going to portray that, because Blade is one of my favorite characters. I named my kid after the guy, for crying out loud. But I'm just going. I think they had to rush to have that so that he's in the world, in the universe where Blade can be, and then they'll bring in Blade with that whole storyline too. So
it was kind of like that puts it into a better perspective, kind of like a means to an end.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where, I mean, it sucks, but it's cool that we live in this world now. It's a double-edged sword where you can't watch, when you're going to watch a Marvel movie or a Sony movie that's associated with Marvel, you can't go in watching it with the mindset of a solo movie, right? We're all anticipating the future. Like, you're watching the movie with, oh, so that can happen in this movie now, and that's going to happen that. Singular movies don't exist anymore in this world, right? Our minds are constantly like, and that's how I felt about this movie too, where I was like, maybe this movie, well, not maybe, this movie kind of sucked, but yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, I can see how they can do this and they can do that. It's no longer a critique of the movie itself. It is that, like, well, it's a means to an end. Like, we need to have it for future movies.
Well, and I think we learned this when we all went down to the COVID lockdown, though, when the Disney started dropping these, TV show episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe this Morbius episode just was a sucky episode.
Yeah,
but,
there you go.
Maybe once it's tied in better with the rest of the characters, because that was another thing that drove me nuts, is kind of going, other than like 2 very, very small references, if you walked in completely green to this movie, not knowing anything about MCU or knowing anything about Morbius' character, and you sat down and watched this movie, you would have no idea that, this is the same city that Spider-Man's in, the same, universe that, supposedly all the rest of the Avengers and all that jazz. But then we find out later on, that there's some different tie-ins. But the only references to any MCU type stuff would be when he made the joke about Venom, that I am Venom. Okay, well, now we heard about him. And then you see the Daily Bugle. That's the paper.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Spider-Man's paper. That is the only references to anything in the Marvel, world.
Well, you outside of Morbius himself being a part of the Marvel world, right?
Yeah, but there wasn't any references to, Stark or Thor or how other Marvel movies will drop little bits of that kind of stuff to go, yes, these characters are in this same world.
Yeah.
Now, as we're finding out towards the end, in one of the end credits, that was kind of one of those things that like explained a little bit on that, but then again drove me nuts. I don't know if you want to go into that right now.
No, we can. Yeah. Okay, so this is, and again, I'm so sorry to the people watching and listening, because here we are bashing another movie yet again. Man, what a world we live in where we can just pick these things apart, right?
Hey, it's still far, 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 far better than, Batman.
God.
I'm kidding. I just wanted to kind of poke at somebody there.
But so we'll go over the end credit, because that falls in kind of the issues that I have with this movie. So I'm just going to kind of pin.
Go ahead. And that's where I figured I'd just stop myself before.
I'll kind of nail these out, and the end credits are included. So things that bothered me the most. We've talked about his ability to control it after trying to figure out how to control it, saying he doesn't know how to control it, right? So we got that. We got the humor that didn't need to be there. Just let it be a dark movie. Okay. His lifelong friend, practically a brother. He's been studying how to cure this disease for years to help his lifelong friend, right? When he also becomes a vampire, his demeanor bothered the absolute crap. I thought it was so cheesy, so corny, how he's dancing around, putting his shirt on in the mirror, and like it just had this very, I don't know, just child-esque feel to it, where it was like...
But see, I also, in his defense too, in that, I can see that because...
He's alive now.
He's finally alive, and he's been kicked down and been treated like crap his entire life, and now finally, yes, I can be, this ultra-powerful person.
Yeah.
And, he's, drunk on power.
Yeah. And I get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get it. It felt corny to me.
Oh, no. Totally. I mean, I can see the character's point of view, but I agree with you on that it didn't feel right.
So that bothered me. It bothered me how, you have Jared Leto, who's a very, very good actor, right?
Very, yep.
And they tried to force those just pointless humor lines out of his mouth as well after he becomes Morbius. And it's kind of like, I really liked his acting in the beginning. And here I go. Sorry, I'm beating a dead horse again. Very, very ominous, dark, serious, good actor. He had you could tell he's down on life, but he still had tried to keep an upbeat personality with this doctor, the female that he had been working with forever, right? But then I understand he became a new person, right? And he's finally alive. That's where I'm just like, directors and writers do it better when you have that caliber of actor, because you're doing him a disservice by the things you're having him say and the mannerisms you're having him there's better ways to portray him finally being out of this disease and alive. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think you're thinking about the scene where, when he's going down for that lab.
100%.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the one. Is this the part in the movie where the guy in the hood
kicks everybody's ass?
Yeah, comes and kicks everybody's ass. I'm like, okay, there's becoming a new person, and then there's just becoming going from a good actor in the beginning to a crappier actor towards the end of the movie, which is writing. You know what I mean? That's because he can act. So it's the writing of the movie. So that bothered me a lot as well. Those of you listening, if you were able to follow along with that, that just mental barf that I'm having.
Once you see the movie, it'll make sense.
Yes,
so it's all
good. It also very much bothered me how rushed the two deaths back to back happened.
Yeah.
Between this guy who was basically his father his entire life, gets killed. He goes to his side. It had to have been less than 2 minutes.
Right.
Within him holding his dead father in his arms to him holding his dead girlfriend in his arms was a span of 2 minutes. You know what I mean? So that's where it's like, if you want to have some cinematic impact, separate those a little bit longer than that. You know what I mean? That was that's just somebody being lazy in the writing room, in my opinion.
It was very rushed there. That's where no, we need to trim this down. We're getting too long. We got to go, So
we're getting a little Batman-esque here. We got to trim this down. So that bothered me, how quick those deaths were together. Not only that, but when his girlfriend / partner / other doctor or whatever, the girl he'd been working with forever, developed a love interest. When she died, I was initially angry, why is she dying? You know what I mean? But then I kind of got it, because at the end of the day, Morbius is a villain. You know what I mean? He's an anti-hero, but he is a villain. He's a villain of Spider-Man's, where throughout this whole movie, they're kind of building him up to be the good guy who's trying to defeat his brother friend. Right. You know what I mean? But I think at that moment, having her go out was kind of Did she like bite her lip or something?
Okay, I see.
So
I wasn't sure if you caught all this, but
so I did catch this where I think when she was dying and he's holding her in his arms, she bit her lip or something
she bit his
lip, right? So there was two ways I perceived that scene.
Okay.
One was they had to have her die so he could go full force into being a villain, right? He needs to have that anger and kind of that sense of, I have nothing else to live for.
Okay.
Now I'm a bad guy. Because some villains that we see in these worlds, they're villains out of rage and anger due to loss.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, that makes sense to me. I don't like how close the deaths were, but that makes sense why she would die. You need to drive him into that villain mindset,
right?
Where he's inevitably
more vengeful than
where he's inevitably going to stay, right?
Right.
But then she bit the lip, which confused my mind off of that because it was like, my mindset was, did she want him to eventually bite her and drain her blood so he could have the power to fight his brother? You know what I mean? That was my other mindset, was maybe she knew that him living off of this artificial blood alone would not would not give him enough strength to fight his foe who had been living off of human blood.
Right.
So I'm like, is she giving him an extra boost? You know what I mean?
Yep.
However, then you skip towards right before the end, and she opens up her freaking eyes.
Yep.
Like she dies, but then she's alive with red eyes.
So now, what are we saying? That her biting the lip and the drop of his blood dripping into her mouth was enough to turn her?
Yeah.
As he's already drained her? I don't...
Yeah, well, he drained her right after that.
He drained her right after that, but okay, so now she has no blood in her system to circulate anything. I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist, but
yeah.
And now that drop of blood was enough, even though he took a vial this big to turn into it, and she gets a drop of blood in her mouth, and that apparently was enough to turn her, because we see her eyes go red. So apparently, foreshadowing, she's probably a vampire.
Yes.
Okay, how does that work?
Why do we have that storyline now? Well, so that's where my head is going.
And I kept on wondering, okay, so is every person that these two are draining, are they going to start turning into vampires? There was no discussion or anything brought up on that.
Yep.
Are these people just drained and they're dead? Okay, well, that doesn't really work with any of the vampire quote-unquote storyline with anything. But then again, like we've seen with Blade, there is a different style of vampire that comes into play rather than this living vampire.
So it could be, right?
Yeah.
Because technically at that point, she was a dead vampire. Right. Whereas Morbius, the whole movie, was a living vampire.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that could be. That just confused when I was already confused, it just confused me even more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that was my original thought. It had to be his blood going into her mouth that turned her.
Right.
Because him and his buddy had been sucking people dry the whole movie, and none of them were turning into vampires. Right. You know what I mean? So that's the only logical explanation, is she knew what she was doing. When he went in for the kiss, she bit his lip, got a little bit of his blood, and that's inevitably what turned her, right?
Yep.
So we can piece that together. Thank you for coming along with us,
Still
everybody,
makes
on this journey.
No sense at all.
We can piece it together, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Where are you going with it?
Right.
You know what I mean? So that happens. He has his big battle. We're still going on with the things I don't like about this movie. Sorry.
Good.
So they have this big battle, and then you get the end credit scenes. Okay? He flies off as Morbius right at the end. Then the first end credit is the cracked purple sky
Hang on. We got to back up just real quick. Okay. As he's flying away. So now, does he have the power of controlling all these bats? Is that one of his powers and abilities?
So I think that's what that was showing in that end scene, is he summons all these bats.
I had no idea that was one of his powers, is to control bats.
And I'm honest, and you and I have talked about this. I don't know a ton about Morbius when it comes to the comic books. Okay, I know some fun factoids, but other than that, I don't know his full backstory. I don't know much.
I'm going to try to look it up, but if you guys know, throw it down in the comments, because I really, is this something that he has that ability, or is that just Sony trying to make him more so? I don't know.
Exactly. Again, we're just going based off of the movie that we just watched. So he summons these bats. He's able to fly with them, right? He takes off, and we get our first end credit scene where you got that purple cracked sky from Spider-Man No Way Home. And like we didn't see it coming, you know what I mean? And then it shows Vulture just showing up in a prison cell. Saying to himself, well, this place feels different. You know what I mean? And then they're talking about how some guy randomly showed up in a prison cell and now we need to release him because we don't know who he is, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Then you get a second end credit scene, and it's Vulture showing up to meet Morbius.
In his Vulture suit.
Okay. And I told you, just the dialogue in that end credit scene alone was probably the most bothersome part of that 2 hours of me watching that. But you and I both were like, okay. Like, what do you... So this,
I got the point now. Okay.
Yeah, so this is what he says. And this is what I told Ben. I said, well, that felt very childish and cartoonish of them from the dialogue alone. Vulture flies up to Morbius. So apparently Morbius is just, even though he was trying to reverse what he had become, now he's just fully embracing it. Okay. No explanation for that.
Right.
However, that's where we're at now. So he's fully embracing being Morbius. Vulture flies up, goes, man, this place feels different. I don't know how I got here. I think it has something to do with Spider-Man. I'm thinking you and I should team up and try and do some good. And then Morbius goes, well, that sounds intriguing. Boom. End of end credit scene. That was literally the dialogue that was said between the two of them. And I was like, that was just the most freaking childish dialogue I have ever heard. Just the way it was delivered, the words themselves, that I think me being here has something to do with Spider-Man. I'm thinking you and I should team up and try to do some good. Wow. Why don't you make it any more obvious than that?
I truly feel like the writers took a day off on that and they need to. We are finishing this project today. Bam.
Yes. No kidding. No, what should we have them say in a unique way? I think I'm here because of Spider-Man. No kidding, dude.
Like, I honestly think Michael Keaton could have ad-libbed that whole scene much better
than the writing itself. Yes, so that end credit scene bothered me the most out of everything that we watch. Not because it doesn't make sense. We know that there's going to be tie-ins. We know, I've told you and Jeff time and time again, the circus is finally here.
Oh, yeah.
The multiverse is open. That's what I refer to as the circus. And everything's just going to be going left and right, and the excuse for it is, well, it's the multiverse, right?
Right.
We knew at some point, like, a Sinister Six was going to come. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not weird that the Vulture and Morbius are going to team up together, but the way in which it was delivered was just like, you couldn't have written that any better than saying, I think I'm here because of Spider-Man. You and I should team up.
Okay, we both agreed that the writing was just crap on that. But all right, but let's look at the speculation on this though, because at that, it makes me more curious on what they're really trying to push there. Because now, okay, this is total speculation. This is my speculation. And we talked a little bit about this on the way out. But I'm just going, all right, so now we know that Venom is in this universe. The Daily Bugle is there. They both know Spider-Man. Okay. This Vulture ended up in this universe. Okay. Well, that's the Vulture from Tom Holland's universe. So now
he's somewhere new.
Where Venom is. So which universe is that going to be? Is that going to be Andrew Garfield's universe? Because there's been speculation of him getting another movie. So is that his bring back to that universe that now they're going to fight Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man? That's my speculation. I don't know. But there's that tie-in of, okay, we are in a different spot with different villains now that are coming together. which Spider-Man are they going to deal with?
Yeah.
You know, I honestly think that'll be the tie-in for that, because I mean, it's Sony. Sony still owns those rights for that Spider-Man. So I don't know.
So that's where I'm so sorry to everybody and how negative I am. I'm just
you and
sorry,
Jeff.
okay?
It's all I tell you.
No, I'm just sorry. And would I watch any Spider-Man movie that comes out or any villain of Spider? Absolutely. Like I love Spider-Man. It's fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am just, when I look at it from a logistical standpoint of our spoiledness over the past, over a decade now with the MCU, right?
Yeah.
And everything just perfectly fitting together. Well, now we're starting to see the literal cracks, you know what I mean? So my big thought process was at the end of No Way Home, Tom Hardy showed up in the MCU universe, but he got zapped back. Mm-hmm. However, he left a small piece of symbiote behind, which leads you to believe that there will be a Venom in the MCU. Mm-hmm. But now, in this Morbius movie, they're making references to Tom Hardy's Venom in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So that right there tells you that you're in the Sony universe.
Right.
And then the Vulture is coming from the MCU universe to the Sony universe.
Right.
So like you just said, you know what I mean? Like, is this going to be Andrew's universe? Is this Toby's universe? Right. Like, whose universe? It's not Tom Holland.
Nope.
Because the Vulture came from the Tom Holland universe.
Yep.
So again.
Which, I'm sorry, by the way, the Vulture now has his full suit in this universe.
In a different universe.
How the hell does that work?
Because his suit to begin with was made out of Stark technology from the MCU universe. I rest my case to you and Jeff that the circus has finally arrived, and it is just going to get crazier and crazier from here, and nothing is going to make sense. And the only explanation we're going to get for anything that doesn't make sense, it's the multiverse. Mm-hmm. Welcome, everybody, to the multiverse circus.
That's the truth. That's the absolute truth. Because, well, I mean, think about it, though. They have to do that. And as much as I hate it, because the writing's going to get so clustered, but they have to, because, you know, they have built up such an incredible sense. You know, I've been rewatching all the MCU movies in order, been rewatching everything. And I still go, the first Avengers movie was the iconic epitome of all of them. Why? Because as I was watching it the other day, I repeated what I said the first time I was going to go see that movie. I don't know how the heck they are going to get all of these huge main characters into one movie. Because how do you take all these solo movies, you know, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, they have all their solo movies. How are you going to get those three big characters into one movie and still let them be a hero?
Yeah.
You know, be their own hero. And somehow, the first time that I've ever known, the Avengers was the first movie to make that happen. And because they did that, it grew so exponentially and so awesome. Then we had Endgame. Okay, great. But where do you go from there? Mm-hmm. Because now, you know, they're going to still want to make that money from us. All right. Yeah. So now we need to bring in new characters. Okay, well, what about Fantastic Four? You know, what about the X-Men? You know,
what about Ghost Rider?
Bring me Ghost Rider. You know? Yeah. But it's stuff like that it's just like, all right, they now need to kind of tippy-toe back to fill in these gaps, to go, wait a second, these characters were involved, but not, you know, in the full front. But then again, maybe they happened in another universe and not this universe. So that, you know, because we even speculated before going, well, maybe it was because the snap, you know, now we can bring in X-Men or whatnot. Something happened with the snap that brought it. No, now we have the multiverse, in which you can have a different universe, and then the convergence and crossovers. And it just, that is going to be their big excuse for everything, because they need to.
Yeah. And it'll be fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
From an entertainment standpoint. You know what I mean? I've said that to Jeff, too, where It's going to be a blast to watch. These are comic book characters in live action films. Obviously, as an adult child, I'm going to love that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm gonna soak it up.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, would you say that as you're rewatching these, that very first Avengers was the beginning of the end of things actually making sense?
Yeah.
Or the beginning of our true mindset shift? Because up until that point, they were all solo movies that we were used to watching solo movies, judging it as a solo movie. But then Avengers, the very first one, showed us, wow, you can tie a whole universe together. And now we're going to watch every movie from this point on differently.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't going to watch the next movie as I'm just watching this for this. I'm going to watch it as, whoa, what could they tie in from that next? You know what I mean? And I think that truly was the beginning of that mindset shift. Whereas now we get us talking about a solo movie and ripping it to shreds because we're trying to compare it to hypothetical futures of this movie mixing with that movie, mixing with, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's not bad. We are definitely in a different mindset now that we've had over a decade of this world. You know what I mean? It's just, we're conditioned to think this way now. You know what I mean? It's just the unfortunate truth is we are conditioned to now think ahead rather than just look at a movie for just being a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Because I mean, even with the last Batman movie, you know, I'm still going, all right, I like this, but where's it going?
Yeah,
you know,
what are you doing next?
Exactly. Who's going to be the new character brought in? Okay, well, we got hints of Joker in there. Okay, how's that going to be brought in? You know, it's just like how our mindset for all these superhero movies has definitely changed. And I don't know if that's a good thing, though, too.
Well, exactly. Like, it might be, it's a confusing thing because take what we just saw, for example, Morbius, right? Mm-hmm. Morbius could be an absolutely terrible movie standalone. Mm-hmm. But our minds are tainted because we go, well, it's a means to an end. Mm-hmm. Well, it's a setup for something better. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with this being trash because it needed to happen. You know what I mean? It's almost like they've created this world where they can excuse themselves from making crappy products. You know what I mean? Because we've been brainwashed to know, well, we had to have this so we could have that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Marvel's like, nah, we can throw some crap in there every once in a while because they're just going to take it as the stepping block to the next best thing.
There you go. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. What's your overall thought of this movie? Did you hate how he like wisps and like blurs away?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because I talked about that at the theater. I'm going, I have no idea why that we have this wispy smoke that's behind him and, you know,
whenever he's
makes
moving,
him all vapory. And it's just kind of like, why? What in his abilities made him now wispy and have this cloud of crap coming off of him every time he flies and jumps or uses powers and crap? It makes me think of Nightcrawler when he, is teleporting, poof, 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 the way he moves.
Yes.
And I'm going, okay, great. He can teleport. Morbius can't. What the heck is that about? Why is that happening?
Why does it look like he's teleporting?
Right. It's just like any other vampire. And that's where, see, I am torn because I look at this and I go, how are they going to bring in Blade and his vampires into this Marvel world? Because the original Blade was so bloody. It was rated R. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was so, just knives and guns and just absolutely awesomeness. And now how are you going to bring that back?
Yeah.
To be a PG-13 style movie and have these vampires not as, dark. And that's where I was kind of hoping that with this, they were taking that darker turn, but, not quite there yet so that it could be when they do bring in, like Deadpool and Blade, that we can have those rated R movies that make that difference, that really show those true characters.
That everything in the MCU doesn't need to be a cute joke.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's where I think that was a big disappointment for me in this movie, was even months and months and months ago when this movie was first announced. I remember reading that this is going to be the darkest movie yet to hit Marvel.
Yeah,
and in my
Marvel's
mind,
dark,
and in my mind, I'm like, sweet.
Yeah.
I'm ready for that. Like you just talked about. I'm ready for something dark.
No, okay. I love Marvel over DC just because DC is so much darker with stuff. And I look at the world and I go, I don't need that stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I enjoy the heroism of the way Marvel does. But because one of my favorite characters is a darker character,
Yeah.
if he's going to be brought back into this MCU universe, we need to head in that direction a little bit, and it needs to be shown in that light. But it is that tough tie-in with everything. I'll be honest with you. If I would have done, if I was in control of the way the Marvel would have worked, I wouldn't have brought in these characters yet. I would have brought in more or less the Fantastic Four and X-Men before I would have brought in these darker ones, because with this darker twist with Blade and Morbius and stuff, how do you step back into that lighter heroic stuff rather than the deep dark stuff? How do you show those two worlds coexisting?
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't have done that yet. I would have done those other ones first, built up that and gone on with that before bringing these. And I'll be honest with you, I don't understand where Morbius is going to be such a huge character when we're talking about, movies like Invasion, and you got Phase 4 that's coming up that are more, space oriented than here. I mean, we have the Eternals and stuff like that. What the heck does Morbius have to do with any of that? And that's why are you bringing him in? And
I think they're trying to tee up a Sinister Six. That's what they're trying to do. But
then, No Way Home was, in a sense, a tee at Sinister Six. I mean, it was not the Sinister Six, but it was the tee up for that. But that's where I gotta go. Still, now you have multiple Spider-Men. Which Spider-Man is going to fight
Which one are you
Sinister
choosing?
Six? Yeah.
So this is totally a sidebar, and maybe you have already seen it, but Jared Leto, actor who plays Morbius, when he went to the No Way Home premiere, have you seen this?
No.
When he went to the No Way Home premiere, dressed up, nice suit coat, and he had a chain necklace on, and the necklace was a 6.
Okay.
That's all it was a 6. And when he got asked about it, he's like, oh, yeah, cool. They didn't say anything. So it's like, they're doing that. He's going to be a part of that.
Okay. So maybe because people, these actors do crap like that.
Yeah.
But that also could be like, hey, that's my lucky number.
No, I get that. But
just
but I'm saying for you to say like, well, I think No Way Home was their Sinister Six.
It was a tee up. I don't know.
But for me, I'm like, I think they're continuing that. Like, I think you're going to get a full Spider-Man and the Sinister Six movie. Like, that's probably going to happen. My mind just goes to, now you have Morbius here, but where are you going to explain his faux-ness with Spider-Man? Just because the Vulture showed up and said, I think I'm here because Spider-Man, we should team up. So now Morbius hates Spider-Man all of a sudden?
All right, do me a favor. Who's all Sinister Six? We have Vulture, we have Mysterio, we have Sandman, we have Rhino.
Morbius.
Okay.
Did you say him?
I didn't.
Who's the Lizard?
And the Lizard.
He's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just speculate that maybe this is Andrew Garfield's universe.
Yeah.
Okay. The Lizard is in his universe.
Is Electro one of them too?
And that's just it. They've done different versions. I thought Electro was and not Morbius. So
yeah,
I don't know then, because that. Now I'm gonna have to go look it up.
I don't have a computer on either, so sorry.
Well, if Jeff was here, him and I could banter while you look that up. But
Jeff, you look that up?
Yeah, Jeff, please.
Oh, that's right. Jeff's not here. Oh, yeah. He was supposed to be here, but I guess not.
All right. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that Morbius is. All right.
Yeah.
And this is who we're going to go off of, is these six. All right. So the Lizard is in Andrew Garfield's.
Yep.
Okay. Now we have Morbius in his.
Yep.
Now we have the Vulture that got brought into his.
Yeah.
We have the Rhino in that suit at that.
Yeah, he's in it too.
But we do not have a Mysterio, and we do not have a Sandman in his universe.
Yeah. But the other thing too is
going to be like sucked in there too.
Well, my thing is, I don't know that they're going to rely too heavily on the original Sinister Six. I think they're just going to take 6 villains of Spider-Man and title it the Sinister Six. You know what I'm saying? It's because you also have Venom in the Sony universe. You going to leave him out of that party? That's not happening.
No. Venom was never part of the Sinister Six.
No, I know that he wasn't. But what I'm saying is, I think they're just going to grab whatever villains they can, team them up, have them fight Spider-Man. Who knows? Again, it's speculating.
This is what you people have done to us. We don't sleep at night. It's long agony nights that we wake up and go, what's going on? Where are the writers going with this crap?
It's the conversations like this that Ben and we get the comments all the time. It's just a movie, bro. It's just a movie, bro. Yeah, well, I've been conditioned to think this way now, okay?
Just the movie. Dude, we're adult children, okay?
Yes.
For crying out loud, we collect this stuff. We live this stuff. Give me a break. My wife has accepted it. Why can't you? Okay, come on.
It's just a movie, bro. Yeah, but we love it so much. We want it to be good and make sense.
Yes, these are our favorite characters. Don't screw with our characters.
I can't. I think I'm here because of Spider-Man. You and I should team up.
Well, that's a right, tight, good idea. Let's do that. I'm done. I got nothing else.
Okay. There you go. For those of you that stuck around, sorry again we love these movies. We're going to go watch them. You could make a new Spider-Man movie every single year and I'm going to go watch it. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter to me that much, but for argument's sake, for the love of the MCU's sake and how this is all gonna, we just, we pick it apart and we dissect it and we talk about it. And
I'm gonna flat out say, I love being wrong. I love when I'm going in one direction going, this is gonna be crap, how can they make this happen? And then they do one thing that just sets it all and pulls it all together and makes it phenomenal. I'm going, oh, and I lose my mind. I love when they do that, but that's not that often.
Yeah.
So
to wrap it up, at least my personal final synopsis or judgment of Morbius would be Sony would have been better off with less is more in the case of this movie. I think too much was done. It kind of made it jumbled and confusing and just holes that didn't make sense. I feel like less could have been more.
So do you feel in your heart of hearts that somebody who hasn't seen this movie yet, but is a Marvel fan for all the rest of the universe, do they need to see this movie to have that be a part of that, or are they okay with missing this?
I'd go see it.
Okay.
I would, just because I still watched Captain Marvel. And I still watch Thor: The Dark World, and they all play a role. You know what I mean? Again, this is what we've talked about. Marvel can get away with the stepping stone. I can create some crap because it's a stepping stone. So, do you have to see it? No, you don't have to see any movie. You know what I mean? But I think it's worth seeing. I wouldn't expect much going to watch it.
That's a lie, actually. You have to see No Way Home.
Well, that is true. If you haven't watched No Way Home, nothing is going to make sense.
Right.
Well, nothing's going to make sense pretty soon here anyway.
The circus is coming.
The circus is here. So there you go, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're on podcast, we would love if you just took a second, left us a quick review. We love all the support we can get. If you're on YouTube, make sure to comment specifically with ideas that you'd like to hear us talk about. We would love to cater some of these videos and these conversations around things that you guys want to hear. But there you go. There's our quick Yet again, a harsh judgment of a movie. This one being Morbius, the living vampire. Thanks for sticking around. We will see you next week. Adios.